Joined by a special guest, Courtney Cronin from ESPN 1000. She's everywhere, and now she's with us here on the show today. What's going on, Courtney?
Not much. Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to make my CHGO debut. I think it's been 2 years since I've been here, so thank you for having me.
Yeah, that's on us. We should
2 years too long. Yeah, 2 years too long.
You guys have such cool setups. I got to say that because I have a bookcase where I do my TV hits from in my living room, which is, like living room. It's literally over there. It's 5 feet away. I need to get a cool podcasting setup though, like to where I have like some sort of ledge to put my computer and have the cool like sports junk is what I call it. I have one at my mom's house when I lived there before I moved into the city, where I had this bookcase of just like all the sports memorabilia, and you guys are just putting me to shame right now. So I really like it. I got to say, I like your dunks on the second shelf, Nick. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, I had to remodel mine because I think one of our amazing listeners in here was like, "Are you just like a Nike shop?" I just had a whole bunch of shoes, so then I limited it down to at least one. So yeah, it takes a little bit of work, but yeah, Courtney, once you get going, we'll have to bring you back on, and then we'll see what it looks like.
See, Courtney, I've seen your TV setup. It looks great. But this fits today because you basically have what we call the Mark Carmen setup behind you, which is basically just a wall and a window.
Door. My grill's out there. Can you see it? There. It's right there.
There you go.
I throw down on that thing. So if anybody wants to come over for some chicken shawarma thighs from Trader Joe's later, you're invited.
That sounds amazing. And it's going to be a great weekend for grilling. So I'm looking forward to that. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We're excited. Want to make sure everybody knows, though, to please hit that like button. If you're excited about Courtney being on the show today, hit that like button. Please subscribe. We're getting closer and closer to our goal pre-draft with our subscribers. So please help us out there. We greatly appreciate it. And our draft party is now 2 weeks away. And I could say that technically the draft starts 2 weeks from yesterday, but we're sold out Thursday night of the draft party. So we're hoping you show up Friday. And we mentioned the other day, we have 2 Javon Dexter signed jerseys that will be given away that night. And we also have a couple Miller Lite prize buckets that are being added as well. That all in it. There they are right there on your screen. If you're watching on YouTube, all of that stuff will be given away Friday night of the draft party. And of course, we have Gary Fensick joining us that night as well. So you can come by, meet Gary Fensick. In terms of former Bears that you want to meet and talk to, he's among the best. Absolute one of the nicest guys that's ever played for the Bears. And he'll definitely loves talking shop and football as well. So come out Friday night, get those tickets, allchgo.com/events. And now that I got the business out of the way, let's jump into the conversation with Courtney. Courtney, you've been doing such a good job. Just on top of all the Bears stuff, in addition to everything else, how do you do everything you do? I have to talk to you about this because it always used to amaze me how JD could switch off his Bears brain, and all of a sudden we'd be in Bourbonnais and he'd be like talking about the Denver Nuggets, like third string forward on a national radio show. And I'm like, how the hell do you do that? I wouldn't be able to name 2 players on that team. How do you do that?
It's like, I feel like with national radio, the way that the show is segmented, it's so much different than local, where we could go 20 minutes on one topic on 1000 here. And it's usually, I know I'm filling in next week. I know it's going to be all draft. It's going to be super Bears heavy. But when it comes to national radio, unless the Bears are a big story, we don't talk about them on ESPN on the network. So I have to make sure that I'm watching, all of the final couple games of the NBA regular season, seeing, are the Suns going to get the 6th seed? Can they stay in that territory? So it does require you to tap into bandwidth you might not have usually. Fortunately, I like the NBA. I used to cover it when I worked out in the Bay Area. So it's not like, oh man, this is such a chore. I have to watch, a bunch of Nuggets games or Nuggets Timberwolves to see who's going to get the 1 seed. I enjoy that part of it. It's just, you do feel spread thin at points. And I know JD and I used to do these radio shows together. And I remember asking him, because he's the one who got me into ESPN radio back in 2019. And I was so nervous for our first show. It was Saturday of Memorial Day weekend. We had the Dickerson and Hood spot. I think it was like 4 to 8 p.m. It's like, oh my God, 4 hours of what are we going to talk about? Do I have to know like everything that's going on from NBA to UFC to Major League Baseball? He's like, read the news stack on ESPN.com, familiarize yourself with, I think at that point there, Kawhi Leonard and the Raptors were a big story. And I think it might've been you know, is leading into like the NBA finals. So it was Memorial Day. There's a lot of meat on the bone, and it was the quickest 4 hours of radio I think I've ever done. And when you have a great co-host, it makes it easy, but we bounce around to like so many different topics where sometimes you can only really get into the surface level of the conversation. So I don't need to know the third string center on the Denver Nuggets. I don't even know who that is right now, but I can talk to you about Nikola Jokic if you want to. But it's fun. It's neat. I love being able to kind of get to scratch that itch of other sports that I don't get to cover on a daily basis.
Well, they love you here already. Isaac Siegel jumping in with a $10 super chat. Welcome, Courtney. Always great to have reporter royalty with us, one of the elite upper echelon in the business. And I think we have one more too. Trevor, $5. You're one of my all-time favorites, Cronin, one of the best Chicago reporters.
You have some very nice followers and very nice listeners. Thank you for the
it's
kind
a different
comments.
It's a different tone when Braggs and Carm aren't here. It's just a totally different show, and the chat is different too. It's great. No, it's great. And this was totally unintentional. I just didn't pop into my brain until now. You're actually the second Around the Horn panelist that's been on the show this week, because we had Kevin Clark on earlier this week. We'll have to have Woody Page on Monday or something. I don't know.
Just line it up and we can rip through all the Chicago people. We can get Jay Adonde, Emily Kaplan. They can all come to my house and do it, and then have chicken shawarma thighs. So kill like all the birds with all the stones.
Okay, you said that twice now. What's a chicken shawarma thigh? I don't know what that is.
Have you never been to Trader Joe's?
Maybe once, and there's one right down the road.
Do you do the grocery shopping in the house, or does Krista do it?
It's 50-50, but I tend to, my thing about grocery shopping is I got to go to Mariano's where I know where everything is. Don't put me in a store where I don't know. I will spend 3 hours in there and I'll just lose my mind looking for things. I need to know where everything is and get out of there in 15 minutes.
That's how I am with the Trader Joe's on Clybourne. I know where everything is, and I am in my healthy eating kick right now. Nick knows all about this because the man is the picture of health and puts us all to shame. But I'm so excited that it's warm out now. So I can actually there's these pre-packaged chicken thighs that are in, I don't know, whatever the sauce that makes chicken shawarma. And I'm going to make them tonight. And I'm so excited because I've got the Masters on TV all afternoon, talking to you guys. The draft is a couple weeks away. It's finally all coming together, but I'm going to have to make these and bring them to Hallis Hall at some point so you can try them.
All right. I'm jumping in because if you're talking Trader Joe's, I got to talk about I just got these honey pearl grapes. Have you ever had any of those?
Ooh, no. Is that a new item? One of the ones that they just debuted
They're
this
amazing.
week?
They don't taste like they're just like candy.
Ooh.
So chicken shawarma thighs, honey pearl grapes.
Is that similar to like a cotton candy grape? Because I've had those and they're the same way. They're like sweeter.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's like they're injecting them with honey or something. I don't know.
I think we have to. I think we need to take the pod on the road. Yeah. Do a live show from Trader Joe's
or from Courtney's house while she's
potluck.
Yeah, that's it.
Hallis Hall.
Oh my God!
Potluck at Hallis Hall. Let's all bring in stuff.
I'm all for it.
Just make sure I know what day that is, so I'm actually coming to Hallis that day and not in the studio. All right, Courtney. In the meantime, while you're doing all of that and cooking and hosting national radio shows and Around the Horn, you also, of course, write some phenomenal stuff on the Bears. This week, you had a story on essentially the best or lessons that can be learned from around the league and how to develop quarterbacks. And obviously the Bears are going to find themselves in this situation with Caleb Williams in just 2 weeks. As soon as rookie minicamp starts, he's going to be in the building. They got to make sure they don't screw this up this time. You talked to, 11 coaches, 2 GMs,
and 2 general managers. Yeah, it was a long process from the combine to owners meetings to gathering all of this intel, but I wanted to get a wide array of people who have done it at a number of different levels recently, a long time ago, people who have done it multiple times like Andy Reid. And I felt like the stuff I came away from, I even learned things that were not just the no-brainer surface level, put him in a good situation. Don't fire the entire staff the year after you draft a guy, the basics of this. But it was really intriguing to see the recent products of good quarterback development, whether it's CJ Stroud, who of course grabbed all the headlines for having one of the best rookie seasons we've ever seen from a QB last year in Houston, but also Jordan Love, who technically falls into that young quarterback territory. He's only played he only started one season last year, and to watch how the Packers did that and the way that they set him up for such success, it's not an apples to apples comparison to what the Chicago Bears are going to be doing with Caleb Williams, but I do think there's a lot of takeaways that the Bears could apply to their own situation to make sure that a rookie quarterback can thrive here in ways that others who they have drafted have not.
So, for example, I mean the one with Brian Gutekunst and how they kind of handled Jordan Love, they had veterans in place. That's not exactly the same situation that Caleb Williams would be coming into, obviously with Chicago. But outside of, what the Packers shared in developing a quarterback, who else did you find the most insightful that really does apply to what Caleb Williams can be coming to in his situation in Chicago?
I would say it's probably Doug Peterson. And let me pull up his quote, because I thought he had some really, interesting things that he was able to relay from the Carson Wentz time in Philly to what he's now, working with Trevor Lawrence. And the run game, the run support, like, of course, my mind immediately goes to, well, there was a priority placed, not just because of the market for running backs in free agency, but knowing what they would want to have surrounding Caleb Williams, of why they went after DeAndre Swift. But what he said about, that element, creating opportunities in the passing game off of the run game. So whether that's play action, like movement, all of those things, that's important for a young QB where it's not all falling on his shoulders. But then the way he talked about what Zach Ertz was for Carson Wentz early on, similar to how he saw Marvin Jones, a talented veteran receiver, a quarterback-friendly receiver, be for Trevor Lawrence, which then almost in a way help the confidence, help the chemistry between Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley, even with Evan Ingram last season when they really saw that come on. That's kind of what the Bears are doing, right? Like, they went out and they used a 4th-round pick on an established wide receiver who's not going to be here forever, but is going to be here at least through this season. I would anticipate at some point there will be a contract extension, but doing that and surrounding your quarterback with people who are going to help elevate him, that seems like a no-brainer for a lot of, just for all intents and purposes. Like, okay, you're going to put talent around a guy. Of course, the guy's going to be in a good situation to succeed. But how often do we see that with the number 1 overall pick, where a quarterback goes into a team that is depleted of talent? Because usually they're going into a team that was really bad the year before, thus why they had the number 1 pick. And since the Bears weren't in that situation, I feel like they felt, with the resources that they had and, the draft capital the last 2 years, double-digit draft classes that have made major contributions right away, they already had some of that infrastructure in place. And then it was about going to get the big fish pieces to kind of fill out the rest of this roster for when Caleb Williams does get to Chicago, if the cupboard isn't bare. And, Peterson talked about that. I think there are a couple other examples too that, you can look around the league and see, all right, this quarterback was set up for success where he wasn't having to do it all on his own. And that's not just on the offensive side of the ball. That's having an opportunistic defense where you don't need to score 30 points a game and your defense can create some of those opportunities for you. So it doesn't just fall on Caleb Williams has to throw 4 touchdowns every game for the Bears to win.
Yeah, and related to that, I found Matt LaFleur's comments very interesting too, because, people just think Matt LaFleur like, oh, okay, so the Packers just sit these guys, they don't play for 3 years. Well, that's actually, Matt LaFleur was Robert Griffin's quarterback's coach when he won Rookie of the Year. He was with Matt Ryan, so he got the veteran side of it there. They go to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff when he was young. So he's seen a lot of this different stuff. And I liked how he just boiled this down in the quote that you had from Matt LaFleur, which was, if they're thrown in there too early, they get scars. Then they start to lose their confidence. And I just think that's and then he goes on to say, it's hard when a guy loses his confidence to kind of recover from that. But I didn't read that as like, just don't play them. Just create a situation where you can avoid those scars. And I feel like that's really what Ryan Poles, Matty Eberflus, and the Bears are trying to do right here with this. We know Caleb's going to play. But how do you create this environment where that confidence we can tell Caleb's a confident guy? I mean, that much is evident. How do they keep that confidence rolling, even though we know the rookie year of any quarterback isn't going to go completely smooth?
And that's a lot of people, you're right, will look at the Bears, or excuse me, the Packers situation and say, well, they had the luxury of sitting Jordan Love for 3 years, more or less, before he was ready to play. And that naturally, when you learn from a Hall of Famer, will give you the confidence to get ready to step in, to have seen how it's done, see how to be a pro, and learn, how to play the game at a much faster level. The Bears don't have that same ability because Caleb Williams is starting day one. And that's something I talked to Ryan Poles about at owners meetings, just kind of trying to figure, well, your quarterback room right now, might there be a chance you bring in a veteran quarterback that's not Brett Rippon? Like, Brett's played 5 years, but he's started 4 or 5 games over the course of his career. And the way that their workaround for this was the Ryan Griffin hire that they made. He's an assistant on the staff. He played in the league for over a decade. He was the backup, really the third string in Tampa with Tom Brady. I think it was Blaine Gabbert was the number 2, and then Ryan Griffin. That's their workaround for having more experience within that quarterback room without having that, experienced guy eat up a roster spot. And that's helpful to where a guy who does have to play early doesn't have the infrastructure of having Joe Flacco in the room for all intents and purposes, the way that Cleveland did last year. And we're able to ride that into the playoffs. The infrastructure is not prototypical because of how the Bears are doing it, but it's a way to circumvent what they believe. Obviously, it's going to be a very expensive draft class to sign, and they didn't have those same sort of resources that they wanted to allocate financially to go get an expensive veteran who would be the person to bring Caleb along. But they're doing it in a different way, and so it's not like that part is completely ignored. You know what I mean? Because on the surface, it's like, all right, well, the quarterback room projects to be Caleb Williams, Tyson Bagent, and Brett Rippon. It's a lot left to be desired in terms of the depth, but they do like Tyson Bagent for obvious reasons. Rippon knows the offense, even though he's only in Seattle, I think, for like a very short stint within the practice squad last year. But they have that institutional knowledge of how to be a quarterback at the NFL level with somebody on the staff that they're going to lean on to make sure that Caleb's up to speed.
Yeah, in some ways, hitting on Bagent as a backup almost complicated it more because you gotta have 2 young quarterbacks at the same time, but they obviously like him enough to keep him in that spot. Courtney, hang tight. Got to pay some bills for a second. I have some more for you here. Make sure everyone checking out Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest, most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks. You pick more than or less than on a 2 to 6 player stat projection. You watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the playoff action, win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. The playoffs right around the corner here, and you can, again, win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks with Prize Picks. Can turn $10 into $1,000 with basketball, hockey. Today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. And they also make it easy with quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/CHGO. Use code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/CHGO. Use code CHGO. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Go check out Prize Picks, and then you got to check out Salerno's. And it's around lunchtime, and a great place to stop by is Salerno's on Tap, located at 1201 West Grand Avenue in Chicago's West Town. And enjoy their tavern-style pizza and ice-cold beers. Whether you're headed to the game, want to watch it live on their big screen TVs, or just watching from home, Salerno's has you covered. And you can go to salernospizza.com or call 312-666-3444. Mention CHGO. That's all you got to do, and you get half off your pizza. It's super simple. And look, I was just in Florida the past couple of days, which is great, but you can't beat pizza from Chicago, and specifically at Salerno. So head to salernospizza.com or call 312-666-3444 for more information. And again, mention CHGO and get half off your pizza.
All right, Courtney, again, if people want to check out that story, they definitely should. ESPN.com. You can find it on Courtney's Twitter feed as well, at Courtney R. Cronin on Twitter. I want to ask you about, so we were just talking about how they've sort of created this situation for Caleb Williams to walk into. What do you feel like they still need to improve? Like, what are the areas that you're looking at this roster, this depth chart, and you're like, I don't know if that's quite enough at this point.
I think the most obvious and most pressing need that they have right now is a pass rusher. So who's playing opposite Montez Sweat? Are you planning to go in with some combination of DeMarcus Walker and a rookie that might not be your number 9 overall pick? Or are you planning to use that number 9 overall pick on a Jared Verse or a Dallas Turner, Latu at some point if you decide to move back? Like, whatever it is, I think that is still the most glaring need on a roster that has had a lot of holes solved or filled this offseason, but also made some upgrades at some pretty significant positions, which, of course, when we talk about the least talked about top 10 pick in the NFL draft this year, which is the Bears at number 9, because we are so focused in on Caleb Williams and the number 1 overall pick, the path that they could take at a number of different positions there at 9 really leaves it open-ended to how they address either for need or best player available, somebody that can help in the short and the long term. Whereas, an edge rusher could certainly help in the short and long term too, but that's just like their biggest flashing need when you're taking a look at the roster. That would be the spot on a depth chart that you're kind of like, okay, this has to get filled at some point. You probably don't feel confident going into the season with this group as is. And you saw the improvement that they made last year when Montez Sweat got here week 9. And the uptick in interceptions because of what the pass rush was doing to opposing quarterbacks, but still knowing, 31st and 32nd in sack percentage and in total sacks, that's not good enough. That's not good enough. If you want to rush with 4, which is what they want to do with Matt Eberflus's scheme, you've got to make sure that that's addressed at some point. And I know when we were talking with Flus at owners meetings at the breakfast that he felt confident they could sign a veteran now. They could wait till after the draft. Okay. But I still think that that's something that you want to use one of your draft picks on to get somebody in here who could be a long-term piece for you opposite Sweat.
So, Courtney, we're talking about the number 9 overall pick. Is there one scenario above the rest that would be the biggest surprise for you that the Bears could possibly go with, whether it's maybe trading back, whatever it may be? Is there one that supersedes the other in terms of being the biggest surprise?
I mean, it all depends how this board falls. It's the obvious answer. I'm not trying to give you a cliche, but it's like, all right, so if it goes there's 4 quarterbacks that go 1, 2, 3, 4, then the receiver order gets pushed. Like, what does that mean for the Bears? What if Joe Alt is sitting there at 9? Can you pass him up? Are you in love with him? Are you, in the sense where it's like, oh God, we have to have this guy? Or do you feel that the offensive line, as is, where they did make an upgrade in their eyes with the new center coming in with Ryan Bates projected to earn that position to start. And then you've got Darnell Wright in his second year. You have Nate Davis in his second year with the Bears. Tevin Jenkins, as long as he can stay healthy, solid option for you at left guard. And then can you get by for one more year with Braxton Jones at left tackle? I feel like that's kind of, to me, that's the third option. When they broke off into pods or whatever they were telling us about how they would go, all right, you guys look at the offensive tackles, you look at the defensive ends, you look at the receivers, we'll come together and we'll figure it out. There's a reason that they listed those 3 positions, because those are the 3 positions most likely to give them the best pick at number 9. I still think it would be if they go offensive line there, just based on the way that we've seen a lot of these mocks in recent weeks pan out, and knowing that defense is the biggest need there, but you might also get a high-end top-tier receiver to you at 9, which could answer the short and long-term equation at that position just because Keenan Allen isn't going to be there forever. So maybe it is somebody that you get at number 9. If best case scenario would be a Malik Neighbors falls to them there, or I don't even want to use the word worst case, realistic scenario, Roma Dunze, who's an awesome receiver, is sitting there at 9 and you're able to draft him. But the trade back scenario makes sense. I'm just wondering if 4 quarterbacks are gone there, who's moving up to number 9 and for whom, knowing that the receiver classes is as deep as it is. I think in Field Yates' mock draft, he had 14 receivers gone in the first 2 rounds, which is crazy. Great year to be a receiver, great year to be a team that needs a receiver, unlike the last 2 years. So for Bears fans out there who are hoping that this can, third time's a charm, hitting on a receiver should be this year, given the talent of that class. But if they can't trade back, if the appetite isn't there for a team that's either trying to move up to get a quarterback, because if you think about the Raiders, the Broncos, teams that probably are in the Bo Nix, Michael Penix territory, they might be able to stand pat and not have to give up a first-round pick to go move up a couple spots. So I know it's a kind of a roundabout way of answering the question, but I would say probably the offensive line to me would be, of anything that would be quote unquote surprise, that's probably where I'd land on that.
We've all been trying to kind of get used to Ryan Poles' general managing style, what Matt Eberflus values. With what you've witnessed, gotten to learn the last 2 years, would it surprise you if he traded up from number 9?
It would. And for a number of different reasons, because you're tapping into next year's draft capital likely to make that happen. And what are you trading up for? We've talked about how deep this receiver class is. Do you really feel that they need to trade up to go get Marvin Harrison Jr.? Because who else would it be?
To me, the situation, Courtney, would be if they just view Joe Alt as like this stud 10-year left tackle. Mm-hmm. And as much as they like Braxton Jones, it just helps your depth. And they're just like, that's the dude where now we have our 2 tackles for, the entire time Caleb Williams is here. And
I get that. I do. And if you think, okay, going from 9 to 7, let's say it's 7, because, unless they want to get in front of Tennessee and going to 6 to the Giants, because I don't feel like Alt is there past 7, because Tennessee has a pretty glaring need there. Mm-hmm. How would they go about doing that? Like that's this year's first round pick. That's, for a team that creates an even bigger gap between where you'd be drafting and then 75 on day 2, which is something that, they'd have to stomach. I don't know if I feel like the offensive line is the biggest outstanding need that they have. Now, if they truly are head over heels for Joe, I believe that he is somebody, like you said, who can be a Pro Bowl left tackle. You can put him there for 10 years and leave him there. Then Braxton Jones becomes your swing tackle. Then that's going to take an appetite for a team that does have additional second-round picks next year because of the GMing of Ryan Poles, that they have the second-round pick from Carolina, which is going to be a top 30 pick, we assume. Top 32 or 33 through say 38. They're not going to be a very good team again this year. So it's another really good draft pick that they could end up giving up, or maybe they end up giving up their own, who knows. But I feel like this is a situation where trading back feels more likely than trading up, just given how few draft picks, how many bites at the apple they have at it this year, and not necessarily wanting to tap into resources for next year unless it's a player that they just cannot say no to.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening there, Courtney. I asked Mark Potash last week, who we started with these Bears Beat Writer Fridays, just about this version of the Bears right now. And he's seen a lot of Bears teams, but so have us, so is everybody here. Does this version of this Bears feel different? Like it can actually end in some kind of positivity. Does it feel different?
It does. And granted, I didn't cover the team prior to 2022, but I was in the division since 17 when I covered the Vikings. And, I remember the optimism around that 2018 group with how aggressive they were in the offseason. And the day before cutdown day, they go trade for Khalil Mack and to build this world beater defense, but they still didn't have the quarterback position right. They were going into year 2 of Trubisky, and there was a lot of hoping and wishing, okay, maybe this defense will be elite enough to let the offense just get by. Certainly we know how that whole thing played out. And I think it's different this time around, where it feels like an organization that has a well thought out plan that's going to last beyond the 2024 season, which is why, we kind of coming back to the draft capital that they have for 2025 and how they've got all their own picks right now, in addition to a couple of picks, especially that second rounder from Carolina that's going to be at their disposal. It's planning for more than 1 year and not just trying to go all in and make these sorts of moves that might pan out right now. But then you look at 2025, and if you made a move that didn't make sense for the future, how do we rectify this? Do we have to circumvent a few things on the roster to make sure that we can still be a competitive team? I know a lot of people looked at the coaching staff at the end of the year, looked at where the team was after 2 seasons of a rebuild and thought, well, if there was any time to make a change, it would have been right now, which is why I truly feel the stability element and why this is different than years past. I have a hard time believing, unless they go 4-13 this year, that they're going to part ways with Matt Eberflus if, I don't know, whatever the threshold some people think is, if it's got to be 9 wins, if it's got to be 10 wins, they've got to build on what they did last year. But the way that they have all positioned themselves and talked about everybody from George McCaskey to Kevin Warren to Ryan Poles to Matt Eberflus, this doesn't feel like business as normal because they've gone through cycles where it's lame duck head coach gets a rookie quarterback, that coach gets fired, rookie quarterback gets passed off to the next staff, so on and so forth. We've seen that repeat itself too often to where basic logic shows you that's not the way to create a successful organization. And for what I think is arguably the most important offseason in franchise history with everything that's at stake here, #1 overall pick, a new stadium that they're hoping to break ground on, or at least like with the plans and with the renderings, and then put what did Kevin Warren say, shovel in the ground on the lakefront by the end of the year if it all goes according to plan. Like, they can't afford to be the quote unquote same old Bears if they want to achieve those things that they haven't been able to because of their own self-inflicted mistakes over the years past. So for someone now covering this team coming out of 2 years of a rebuild where there weren't a lot of wins and there wasn't a lot for this team to hang its hat on, now they're finally like, they made it through like a big part of the storm to where now in a way kind of feels like, all right, this is the true year they can start to climb. So I'm sure there have been moments like that for this team in the past, but this team does, like this iteration of the Chicago Bears feels different to me than teams that I grew up around when I lived in Glenview growing up. And just like being around the division for as long as I have, covering the Bears, knowing that it never felt like the plan was as concrete and lined up as perfectly as this one has the potential to.
Plus, you can't fire next gen Flus. I mean, look at this guy now. He's got the new hair. He's giving Nick a run for his money with his haircut. He's got a Gucci bag he's rocking. Wasn't that a Gucci bag at the owners' meetings?
He looks so comfortable in his own skin. And I know, like, we were talking about this in the Chicago Bears pod, myself and Pat, the designer, that, you know, when you guys go to a barbershop, I assume you go to the barbershop, you don't cut your own hair.
Yes.
I would never be talented enough to cut my own hair, but you feel like $1 million when you leave there. Like, like when I get my nails done, which like, that's my thing. Like you can't tell me anything after that. Like, I feel like I could just rule the world. And there's something to be said about Matt Eberflus in the way that he's exuding confidence when he talks publicly now that we didn't see throughout the last 2 years, and particularly in press conferences this year where he's either talking himself into a corner or he doesn't have an answer for something. The way that his new look and refreshed energy that he's exerting, like when he talks publicly, it feels like that might be reflective of how he feels things are going in the direction the team's going, which, you know, what was Dion's thing? You know, look good, play good, feel good, they pay good. Like, there's something about new look Flus that feels different than someone who weathered the storm of a really tough 2 seasons and is now starting to see that his plan that he put together with Ryan Poles is starting to come to fruition and actually has some legs to it.
All right, one more super chat for you on the way out here as we say goodbye. But we got one from our guy, Matt Nuku, $4.99. Courtney is the GOAT. Honestly, it's always fun listening to a football mind like hers. Happy Friday, everyone. Bear down. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. That was nice.
Yeah, he's the best.
You have some really, really nice followers and really nice listeners.
Well, I mean, you invited everybody over for dinner, so I think they're just...
All right, well, if that's the case, then, like, you know, bring an appetizer, bring a bottle of wine. Like, I don't have like that much food here for everybody. You didn't even get me a guest list yet. So, like, RSVP is due by 3:00, so I can know what all I need to provide.
Fair enough. Bring an app.
I got the grapes.
We'll stop at Trader Joe's.
Also got the grapes. It's got to go to Trader Joe's. Bring a bottle of Prisoner. Everyone be great. Courtney, thanks so much for jumping on.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, check out all of Courtney's work, ESPN.com, and on Twitter at Courtney R. Cronin. She is the best. She's been a great addition to the Bears beat the last couple of years, and I appreciate her time on this Friday.
We all silly like the mayor.